All right. Now let's start with the bantamweight fight. Because I feel like I figured out why I'm so critical of Cavalcante. I think it's because she lacks a jab. And her style, the way she fights, demands a jab. She prefers to box. I feel like all fighters who prefer to box should have a jab. You should always have a jab. If you prefer to throw your fists in this fight, guess who had the better jab? Silva. She wasn't using it that often, but she has a better jab than Cavalcante. The jab that she landed in the third round, go back and look at that jab. That was almost funny. Watch Cavalcante's face before the jab lands. And then watch her face after it lands. That jab changed Cavalcante's face. She punched Cavalcante in the eye with the jab. And Cavalcante's eye, it's shut. It started to squint from the jab. It stayed, in a squinted position after the jab landed. It landed with pop. You heard the jab land. This is a jab from Silva that landed on Cavalcante. The jab even threw Cavalcante out of position. Go back and watch. Cavalcante was in an orthodox position before the jab landed. This was in the third round. After the jab lands, Cavalcante ends up in a southpaw position. So one jab from Silva changed Cavalcante's life in two ways. She found herself in a different position, in a southpaw position rather than an orthodox. And it closed one of her eyes. And I suspect one of the reasons why she ended up in that southpaw position is because after the jab landed, her lead eye was that damaged eye, the eye that absorbed the jab. And I didn't see jabs like that from Cavalcante. Cavalcante primarily wants to throw a power strike. She wants to throw hands, but her main strike are right hands from orthodox positions. And I think she's naturally orthodox. She wants to throw hands, but she primarily wants to land a right hand. She was even throwing right hand leads. So I figured out my frustration because when she's not using the jab, Cavalcante spends a lot of time standing there, throwing feints. And that's the thing. Those moments where she's throwing feints, she should be popping out a jab, even if it's periodically. Like Joanna. She could have afforded, at least in the third round in this fight, to pop Silva with, let's say, 2 jabs during the times she spent in front of her throwing feints. So what I'm saying is, she could have included jabs. I'm talking about Cavalcante. Without going crazy. I'm not saying that she needs to go in there and just tee off on her opponents. I don't believe she just should have teed off on Silva. But when you don't have a jab at all, you just don't have a jab pumping. I don't remember one jab landing from Cavalcante. When she throws a jab, it has nothing on it. She only throws it to basically blind you so that she could land the right hand. Go back and watch. When Cavalcante would throw hands and land to Silva's head, the jab would be insignificant. The main punches, her bread and butter, the damage, the punches that inflicted damage were coming from her power hand. I'm not saying the jabs are supposed to land all kind of. She's not landing a jab. She has no real jab. And I think some fighters they're going to take advantage of that. I feel like in the third round in this fight, at a couple points, Silva decided to throw shots. Silva decided to take chances and throw shots. Only because Cavalcante wasn't. Silva spent a good number of minutes or seconds. She spent a good deal of time standing there as well. But I believe Silva was doing that in anticipation. And basically she was intimidated by Cavalcante's offense. She didn't want to open up. She knew Cavalcante was a better striker. But in a couple moments, I believe Silva decided to try to tee off on Cavalcante because she realized, yeah, this girl's a better striker than me, but she's not crazier than me. She's not using it. And if she's not going to throw nothing out there, then I'll throw something out there. I believe that's how Cavalcante got hit with that jab. Go watch that third round. A few seconds before the jab, Cavalcante throws an air punch. A punch to just showboat. Because she throws it to her right. She didn't even throw it in the direction of Silva. And then she's standing there, no head movement, Cavalcante. She's standing there with her face right there in range. And Silva just pops her square in the face with a jab. In moments like that, Cavalcante should have been throwing a jab of her own. That is what I'm saying. I believe her style requires a jab that she doesn't have. That's why it looks the way it does. That's why she fights the way she does. That's why I got so frustrated. That's why I've been so frustrated and get frustrated watching her. Because in moments where she clearly has the advantage, and in this fight, she even had Silva hurt. I believe Silva was ready to go in that third round. All it took was a couple good flurries. If not a couple good flurries, I believe she could have broke Silva down badly with the jab, Silva would eventually start backing away because Silva's easy to hit. That's the thing. That's why I thought this fight would be even more lopsided than what it was. As it was still lopsided. But it was more competitive than I think it should have been. And it's all because of Cavalcante's lack of a jab. The time that Cavalcante spends in front of her opponents in striking range, not throwing any shots, there are going to be fighters who are going to take advantage of that. And one of those fighters just might be the fighter that she just tried to call out, that might actually backfire against her. In the post-fight interview, she called out Irene Aldana. Okay, I believe Silva, Mayra Bueno Silva, had somewhat of, she had a little success in that fight. And the success came, it was generated by Cavalcante's lack of activity. Had Cavalcante been throwing a jab, a serious jab, a jab meant to land out there, I don't think Silva would have had the success that she did have. Cavalcante is going to run into some crash out fighters. Fighters who are going to say, hey, you want to just stand there throwing feints, stand there looking at me? I'm about to tee off on you. I'm about to go crazy on you. Because, girl, you're not crazy. Yeah, you might have a good right hand, but I'm willing to throw my hands far more often than you are. And if you prefer to stand there for so much time not throwing any strikes, that tells me you're not comfortable in a brawl. But we'll see. I just feel like Cavalcante could use a jab. She could use jab. And the jab automatically would increase her output. I don't even think that she needs to increase her output that much. If she used a jab, a real jab, and if you go back and watch, especially in the first round, you'll notice her jab, she throws Macy Barber jabs. She throws jabs without follow-ups, without following up with a right hand. She'll throw Macy Barber jabs just to be throwing something out there. Just to, control range. Yeah. Jabs that are not intended to land. She throws those. And I don't think she should. Why? With reach and speed like that you have. Go ahead and pop these chicks with a real jab. Then that'll open opportunity for other shots. You notice Cavalcante likes to throw combinations. She likes to follow up a jab with a right hand, but the way she throws them, the right hand has all the power on it. Again, the jab is not meant to hurt. It's not meant to cause any type of damage. It's not meant to be a factor. That's the problem I have with it. She doesn't make her jab a factor in even her combinations. The jab is just there to blind her opponents and prepare them for the right hand. If you notice in this fight, the most meaningful shots, the consistent shots from Cavalcante came from her right hand, not her left hand, not her jab. Whereas Silva's most significant strikes came from what? Her jab. Because she was at least willing to throw it. Now, when Silva landed that flush jab in the third round, it sort of inspired Cavalcante to use her jab more. And, hopefully they can get Cavalcante to that point. But I picked Cavalcante. She won. She had damage, Cavalcante, on her face. So she did take some shots that I don't think that I didn't expect her to take. Honestly, it's just I'm seeing this pattern fight after fight with Cavalcante, where I expect the fight to be more lopsided than what it ends up being. Her opponents are more competitive than I expect them to be. If that pattern continues and fighters are actually taking advantage of the absence of a jab and the lack of activity, what do you think's going to happen? She's eventually going to lose. Eventually going to lose. And I don't know what she sees in Irene Aldana. Maybe she, her and her team see some type of weakness in Aldana. But Aldana, I think, has a good chance of taking advantage of that lack of activity. We'll see if Aldana accepts and if the UFC matches them up. But other than that, I enjoyed the fight. I think Cavalcante is one of the best bantamweights. Fighters come in here and they want to take her down. And it's like they're never successful. Silva's plan was to get a takedown in this fight. Unsuccessful. So she seemed to have top-notch takedown defense. She's turning more and more into a bantamweight version of Joanna. She's not getting ragdolled. Instead, she's allowed to stay on the feet and, have her way in the striking department. She threw some decent leg kicks. Did y'all see at the end of the fight, Silva's foot, her right foot was swollen bad, real bad in this fight. Cavalcante was throwing a lot of leg kicks along with the punches. Again, like a Joanna type of style. She wants to box, but look, the difference between her and Joanna, the lack of a jab. Joanna had a much better jab. And this is why I think that's part of what frustrates me. I went back and watched the fight because I'm like, maybe I'm too critical of Cavalcante. Maybe I'm putting expectations are too high. Maybe I'm just such a fan of her striking that I'm anxious to see more of it. So I get more frustrated when she's not throwing that out there. But notice that what Joanna was able to accomplish, it led her to the title, along with 5 title defenses. And all she was able to accomplish was keeping fights on the feet, having a jab be a factor in her fights, along with her boxing, right? She preferred to box, and her, leg kicks. Almost identical to Cavalcante. Cavalcante reminds me of Joanna more than anybody else right now. Except for the jab. Include a real jab. Not something that she's just, tossing out there with nothing behind it. If she develops a real jab, I believe she's going to be a real contender. But I just see it. I don't see her stopping Kayla Harrison's takedown attempts. I believe that when I see it. But if that fight were to happen, I'd be looking forward to that fight. So, like I said, things are heating up at 135. And, we're about to see more fights, more meaningful fights. For example, if they make Aldana against Cavalcante, I'll definitely be watching that fight. It's going to be hard for me to not watch that fight. Better quality fights, I'm here for it. But shout out to Cavalcante. As good as she is, I don't think she is fighting to the best of her abilities. Now the other fight, I was rooting for Gomez, but I picked Tisha, and this fight didn't go the way I expected at all. Gomez, I thought, gave one of her best performances. I don't know if it was the style of Tisha or what, but I thought that was a like a mature performance, focused performance, like I said in the post. Discipline performance. You could hear Tisha's trainers telling her to look out for that big looping right hand. You could hear him. So every fight, these fighters are preparing for that right hand because Gomez has knocked girls out with it. Now there are fighters who are training to look out for it. That's going to be a problem for Gomez. Even though she landed it a couple times in this fight, it took her a while to land them. And they didn't land as flush as she would like. But she missed a lot more than she landed. And because of that, I believe Gomez, like Cavalcante, is going to need to set it up. If she wants to land it, she puts a lot of power into it. If she wants to land it, she's going to have to throw it differently than what she's shown in the past. Fighters are training for it. They're looking out for that big looping right hand. You're going to have to set it up with a jab or something. A jab is the perfect thing to set it up with. But it seems like Gomez, in order to have knockout power on that right hand, she has to throw it like a haymaker. It seems like she can't throw it like straight or use a tighter range. It has to be a haymaker with a large loop, a wide range of motion. Hopefully that's not the case. And, hopefully she can tighten that up. Tighten it up and still have knockout power on it. But aside from that, she was a smarter striker than Tisha. I didn't expect that. That kind of surprised me. In everything that she did, she was one step ahead of Tisha. Tisha seemed to be more reacting to what Gomez was doing rather than in being assertive and forcing Gomez to fight reactionary. Gomez seemed to be controlling the fight. She was controlling the action, pushing the pace, going forward, right? And I just didn't expect that. She was patient. She set a good pace. I remember saying that in the very first round, the first or second round. I mentioned that this was a good pace that Gomez set. And her style enables her to keep her stamina because she doesn't really wear herself out like that. She fights at a steady pace, yet she puts a lot of power into a lot of things that she does. She doesn't tire out that easy. She doesn't seem like one of those fighters who by the second, third round is going to be dead tired. She paces herself well, Gomez, seems like to me. And there were some good wrestling moments in this fight. Especially that moment where she sort of peeled Tisha off the cage and sort of slammed her onto the ground. I think it was this moment right here. I thought Gomez was in trouble for a minute. Then she ends up, on top and in full side control. So they had grappling moments, and Gomez got the better of those as well. So this was good. This is good for a division. Tisha, after the fight, guess what she's talking about? Retirement. Did she retire after the fight? I didn't even stick around to see. She might have laid her gloves down in the cage for all I know, because in her first social media post after the fight, she was talking about how great of a career she had. So she's about to be gone. That's why I was rooting for Gomez. I knew she was going to do that. She's on her way out. So I'm rooting for the young fighters that are moving up, who get, on a win streak, got some momentum. So good night for Gomez. Good night for both, because Silva's not doing nothing. She ain't about to do nothing. The right fighters won. Both fighters. Right fighters won in order to keep both divisions interesting. And I'll leave it there.